Hello there everyone, welcome to Edupedia World 9th grade Computer Applications video lecture series. I'm Upeka Vanibona, and from this episode we are going to demonstrate useful features in Microsoft Access. Okay, now we first get into know what are the features provided by Microsoft Access, what we can do with the implemented database in Microsoft Access, and then we try to perform it using our implemented simple airline database. The first feature we are going to discuss is forms. So forms allows user to type data into a database table using a specially designed form rather than typing directly into a database table using the datasheet view. The advantage of forms over typing into tables is that forms can be tailored to only accept certain information or only information in the correct format. So for that, forms provide another means of data validation. For example, a drop-down list box. Drop-down list boxes for data selection make the input of data faster and reduce typing errors. So in this contact details form in this image, the entry fields for the company, job title and category are selected from a list rather than typed by the user making the data entry. So this method is far more user-friendly for a user to input data into a well-designed data input form compared to entering data directly into the associated table. When the user saves the form data, the database table is updated to show the new or changed details. These forms can make attractive by including graphics such as logos and images, and also can include help text and contain hyperlinks to other forms to be popped up. The second feature is reports. A report is a printed document that contains information from the database that has been organized and presented in a specific way. It is easier to read and obtain the information you need from a report rather than from looking at the data in the database tables using the datasheet view. And reports are useful for presenting query results in a professional manner. We later come into what is a query. So these reports, they can also be used to display totals, averages and other calculated fields. Reports can group, sort and summarize data to give information that is useful for the decision makers in organizations. For example, a senior sales manager may want to view a report showing monthly product sales by each sales division in order to see what sales teams have been underperforming. So this is an example such like of that. Apart from text-based reports, we can include graphical chart-based reports. So this will make the information much easier to understand. So as with the forms, reports can be customized to include the logos, colors and font styles of an organization. The next feature we are going to discuss is query. The prime function of a relational database is to store data in an organized way so that the users can interrogate, that means search, and manipulate, that means sort the data. The interrogation of a database is called querying the database, and a question used to interrogate the data is called a query. There are many reasons why users may wish to query data. It might be to identify a group of records that share a certain attribute. If I take an example from the student school context, to identify a list of students who obtained marks above 50. Or else it might be a reason to do calculations based on the information held in records. For example, to identify the average mark of the class. So in order to calculate that, you need all the marks obtained by the students stored in the database. The next reason might be to update the details of a specific record or group of records. For example, you may need to assign a new subject for all the students who are following another specific subject. Another reason might be to view the data in different combinations and formats. For example, if you have captured the date of birth of the student, you maybe need to view their age along with their birthday. So now let's get deep into queries. A query design specifies which records the user is searching for and what fields to display out of these records. So there are two types of queries, a simple query and complex queries. Let's take simple queries. A simple query looks for data in one field only. This example in here, query to find the names of all students who are in the form 10B. The student table must be added to the query, the fields to display are selected and the search criteria are defined. And for the complex query, a complex query looks for the data in two or more fields and uses the logical operators or and or not. And also it uses comparison operators to refine the search results. So these comparison operators include equal sign, greater than or less than signs, greater than or equal to sign or less than or equal to sign, and not equal sign. So these examples in here uses a complex query to find all of the students in Form 10B and who were born before 1995. So this query uses the logical operator AND. You can see the query design in the bottom. Note that this time there are two entries in the search criteria row, and also note that this time the query has been given a meaningful name. So giving a meaningful name saves other database users from unnecessarily creating the same query. In this example, it is a new complex query that uses the logical operator OR to find students who are in Form 10A or Form 10C. So this time in the query definition, there are two criteria lines. Another important feature in queries is wildcard characters. For example, think that you may want a list of all the students born in November, or all of the students whose surnames start with the letter C. So wildcard searches allow you to specify the part of the data that you know and leave the data handling software to fill in the blanks. The final thing we are going to discuss in here is validation. A validation check is a rule that is built into a database to check that the data entered is sensible, reasonable within the acceptable boundaries and complete. So this doesn't mean that the data is actually correct, because for that purpose we need a verification process. In validation, what we are trying to do is establishing rules for the values that we expected to be entered. There are several ways to define validation rules. So let's look at each of them. You might be realize some of them are already demonstrated in the previous episodes. So the first one is type checks. Data types of the field provide a basic method of validation. These field data types are assigned to the fields during the creation of the database table. These include numbers, text values, boolean values, date and time values, etc. Using them, we can restrict what can be entered. For example, if a user tries to enter text in a date field or alphabetic character in a numeric field, their entry will be rejected. We already know how to provide data types of the field. So the second one is range checks. These are used to limit the range of data a user can enter. For example, the day part of a date must be in the range of 1 to 31. Another example is in exam grading and it has only grade A to grade E. You can use this range check. So when a user enters a value, he is only allowed to enter a value between the defined range. And the third validation rule is presence check. This simply checks that an entry has been made in a particular field. If you can remember, in Access, we use that required option. With that, you can mention whether a null value, which means an empty value, is not permitted. Usually, not every field in a record need to be filled in. However, there are likely to be some that must have a value. The presence check means that the system will not allow the record to be saved until an entry is made. For example, an application for a passport must have the applicant's name. The fourth validation technique is length check. All alphanumeric data has a length. A single character has a length of 1 and a string of text such as hello world has a length of 11. You must note that the spaces are also counted as characters. A length check ensures that such data is either an exact length or does not exceed a specified number of characters. For example, in mobile phone numbers, each country have a fixed number of digits for mobile phone numbers. If you can remember, in the pilot table experience level field, we use a length check as 1 character. Next validation is lookup. A lookup check takes the value entered and compares it against a list of values in a separate table. One use of lookups restricts users to predefined input using drop-down lists. So the user is forced to use the list box to select from a predetermined list of valid values. And the final validation technique is input masks. Certain alphanumeric fields in a database may require entry in a particular format with mixture of numbers and letters. For example, postal codes, national ID numbers, driving license numbers, and product codes. So now you know what are the other things that we can do from Microsoft Access. So in here we discussed about creating reports, creating forms, creating queries, and defining validation rules. From the next episode we will try to demonstrate it using the Microsoft Access. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode. This video brought to you by edupediaworld.com. Watch more from our website.